Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to State of Education K through 12 Update Membership Luncheon. I'm Lori Matson, President and CEO of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. This is the Chamber's first in-person luncheon since August of last year. So we're really happy to see so many of you, so many familiar faces, new and familiar faces in the room. We're also pleased to offer this program virtually. So we want to be sure to welcome all of our viewers on Zoom. And although we're meeting in person today, we want everyone to know the Chamber is still very mindful of the risk posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. So you may have noticed our seating arrangement is a bit different today. We've reduced the number of seats at a table. So we've got 4 or 5 at a table, so we can give you all a little extra space. And we also ask that unless you're actively eating or drinking, that you wear your mask. COVID-19 has impacted all of our lives, whether we've personally contracted the virus or not. A recent study showed that the impacts of the pandemic on the K through 12 student learning was significant, leaving many students behind in reading and math. And that's not to mention the extreme toll COVID-19 has taken on educators, staff, and students' mental health. Today, we're going to hear from the superintendents of Kennewick and Pasco School Districts, Dr. Traci Pierce and Michelle Whitney. And unfortunately, Richland School District Superintendent Shelley Redinger is ill today and can't be with us. But we're very thankful that from the Richland School District, we have Clinton Sherman, who's the Executive Director of Financial Services. So we look forward to hearing from him and wish Shelley a speedy recovery. The 3 school district officials will address the impacts of the pandemic, give us an update on strategic priorities and upcoming levies, and tell us how our schools are preparing students for success. So we know you're all under a great deal of pressure. I think how did you even get here today with everything you've got on your plate? But we really appreciate your time to speak to our members today. So thanks so much. At this time, I'd like to introduce the elected officials that have joined us for our luncheon. We have Richland City Council member Teresa Richardson. I see Teresa. And if you'd like to stand and stay standing, we'll give everyone a round of applause at the same time. I also see Port of Benton Commissioner Roy Keck here. Roy, if you'd please stand. And also Franklin PUD Commissioner Stu Nelson. And Kennewick School District Board member Michael Connors is here as well. Michael, there's Michael. And if we've missed anyone, we try to catch people as they come through the door, but please stand if we missed you. And if not, if you'd please help me thank all of our elected officials for attending our luncheon today. And then if I could ask all of you to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the Thank you. You can be seated. Before we get into our program, I have a couple of chamber updates to share with you. Our annual report publication is hot off the press. And if you haven't seen the annual report yet, you can use the QR code right here on the monitor and you can view it on your phone. We're really excited for this. The annual report covers the chamber's achievements over the past year, which were significant, including our COVID-19 relief efforts, business advocacy, workforce programs, and much more. We want to give a special thanks to Bechtel for sponsoring our annual report this year. And also the 2022 legislative session began on January 10th, and we're keeping close tabs on several key issues. The Regional Chamber is a proud member of the Tri-Cities Legislative Council, along with TriDec, Visit Tri-Cities, the Tri-Cities Hispanic Chamber, the Pasco Chamber, and the West Richland Chamber. The platform for this session includes positions on agribusiness, clean energy and the lower Snake River dams, economic development and infrastructure financing, K through 12 and post-secondary education priorities, regional transportation priorities, rural broadband, taxes and spending, and tourism in the Tri-Cities and in Washington. You can read the 2022 legislative platform on our website at tricityregionalchamber.com, or also there's a QR code here on the screen and you can view it on your device. And also you can keep up to date with what happens in Olympia by watching the Chamber's Session Spotlight videos. This short business-focused weekly update spotlights legislative happenings that are relevant to the Tri-Cities business community. New videos are posted every Monday on the Chamber's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And now I'd like to invite Elizabeth Holt to the stage to announce the January new member of the month, or not the new member of the month. I'm getting these combined here. We have I want to start this all over again. We have a member of the month for January, and we have several new members that are attending here today. So please help me welcome Elizabeth.
Yes, like Lori said, I'm excited to be here today to announce some of the Chamber's newest members that were able to join us here at our luncheon today. So if I call your name, please join us here on the stage, and Lori will hand you your membership plaque and we will pose for a group photo. So first we have Jared Miller with Solvent Financial and Consulting, Laura Lindsay with the Underground Tap House, Gina Bullis and Marcus Manderbach with Go Beyond Consulting, Beth and Trevor Rose with Sub-Zero, Jeremy O'Brien with Click It RV Tri-Cities, and we have April Connors with Windermere Real Estate. Thank you all for your investment in the Regional Chamber. We look forward to working with you. Please help me welcome these new members to the Regional Chamber with a round of applause. Next, it is my pleasure to announce the January member of the month. The Chamber's Awards and Recognition Committee takes special consideration to recognize businesses and organizations that positively impact our community. This organization is no exception. I am pleased to announce that the committee has chosen Communities in Schools of Benton and Franklin as the January member of the month. Communities in Schools serves 5 school districts in our region and works directly inside 34 schools. Their mission is to surround students with a community of support, empowering them to stay in school and achieve in life. They help students with basic needs, academic assistance, life skills, and more. They accomplish these needs with school-based site coordinators. These coordinators empower students to stay in school through individualized access to resources and ongoing encouragement. Learn more about communities in schools, and help students by subscribing to their newsletter, following them on social media, volunteering, or donating. Please help me welcome Lupe Mars, Executive Director of Communities in Schools, to the stage to accept their plaque for the January member of the month with a round of applause.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks again to all of our new members and our member of the month. We have another member that we'd like to recognize. It's an announcement we don't often get to have the pleasure of sharing, but in January, Central Plateau Cleanup Company joined the Tri-City Regional Chamber at the visionary level, the highest level of membership the Chamber offers. CPC Co. is the prime contractor for the environmental cleanup for the Central Plateau at Hanford, and CPC Co-President and CEO Scott Sachs and Deputy Project Jenny Stoltz are here today to accept this plaque and our gratitude for their major support of the Tri-City Regional Chamber. I see Scott and Jenny here. Join me on the stage, please. Thank you so much. Thank you. They're smiling, right? Thank you so much. We really greatly appreciate the support of all of our members, and visionary members provide a lot of financial investment in the chamber to complete our programs and all of our activities. So thanks so much for that. More investment news. The GISA Credit Union is the sponsor of today's luncheon. So please help me welcome GISA President and CEO, Don Miller.
I do want to thank the Regional Chamber for coordinating this event. It's a lot of work to put it together. And so thank you so much for all that work for you and your team. I also want to thank the superintendents and educators for being here today. I always look forward to this presentation. It's interesting to hear what's going on in our schools. You know, certainly at Geisa Credit Union, I think at all businesses, the COVID pandemic has been a major impact on daily operations. It's a major impact to our members each and every day. And we all read the headlines across the country. And man, I feel for our administrators and our educators as they try to navigate the whole environment. So I truly appreciate as you administrators try to lead your districts through this. There's people all over the fence on this issue, and it's not an easy line to walk. I'd like to give them a round of applause. I appreciate you. Unquestionably, I'm a huge proponent of education, and so is Geisa Credit Union. You know, as a community chartered credit union and a state chartered credit union, Geisa really strives to make a positive impact in the communities we serve. And I'm really proud of the efforts that we have underway that support schools, supports university and colleges, and also supports our local communities and organizations in our communities. I'd like to take a couple minutes and highlight some of those items that we do that really help support our schools. We have a cooperative education program with over a dozen schools across the state. And what is that? Well, we actually have a branch in the high school. It's a cooperative education program where the students in the school run that little branch, and it's not open to the general public, obviously, for security reasons, but those students get to learn about finance, banking, leadership, jobs, what's it like to show up on a daily basis and have to open those branches. And, you know, my staff gets to work with them, young people, on a regular basis. And a couple of the people are sitting at this table where I'm at that really lead this program, and over and over and over again, I just hear all these positive things about these young people, and it's really encouraging to hear. Another program we have that is more in the financial line of supporting school districts is we have an affinity debit card program. What is that? Well, our members get to help us decide where we donate dollars as an organization. So we have schools literally across the state of Washington that we partner with, and we use their affinity cards. And every time a member swipes that card, we carve some money aside in order to support and give it back to the partnering schools. Last year, or late last summer, it was my honor to donate back over $268,000 to our partnering schools. The three largest partners, recipients, were here in the Tri-Cities, and I believe they all received over $56,000 that goes to programs to support, obviously, the students. It's all about the students, and it might be technology, it might be some clubs, it might be some needs that the student body has. So again, I'm just really proud and pleased that we're able to do that. We also, last year, or about a year and a half ago, we launched a Heroes affinity card. Well, educators are one of the groups that we've said those are our local heroes. And in the first year, we donated back about $48,000 last year for grants that our teachers requested and submitted to us. So again, just another way I'm extremely proud of the way we're able to partner and give back. And I love these programs because our members help us decide where we're donating back our money. You know, and the last thing I'll highlight is simply direct college scholarship funding. Last year, we doubled our give. And so right now our plans are $100,000 a year. We're donating back and giving back for applicants to go to college. Those are scholarships we divvy up. If any of you have an interest, I believe you can, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you can go to our website. Those applications are still open until the end of February. And then we have a community group that gets together and helps decide where these funds are going to go. So I'm bragging a little bit about the credit union because I'm so proud of my team and our board that just truly is committed to supporting and giving back to our community. So thank you so much for listening. I'm really looking forward to the school updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And you've got a whole team of people here, so it's good to see all of your team here with us today. We appreciate your support of today's program. So now I'm going to introduce my 2022 board chair, Andy Sterling, to come to the stage. And Andy, I was thinking, normally in January, we have our annual Women in Business event, although this is the second year. We hope to do it this year still, but last year we didn't do it at all. But it's usually in January on this date. And normally the board chairs have to get up in front of, like Chris Rivard 2 years ago had to get up in front of 1,000 people on his very first luncheon. So we're kind of easing you into this, and you're very outgoing, so you're going to do great, but eventually we're going to get back to this in-person stuff and you're going to be in front of 1,000 people or more. So welcome Andy Sterling, our board chair.
Thank you for the intimidation, Lori. God, oh my gosh, to be in person. I guess it's just nice to wear pants again. So I actually worked on that one-liner for quite a while, and I hope it's the masks that. So anyway, let's get started with today's program. Today we'll hear from representatives from Richland, Kennewick, and our Pasco School Districts. But first up is Dr. Traci Pierce. Dr. Pierce has served as Kennewick School District Superintendent since January 2020. Before coming to Kennewick, she spent 24 years in the Lake Washington School District, including 6 as superintendent. She holds a master's degree in educational leadership from City University and a doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies and a superintendent certificate from the University of Washington. Go Huskies, right? Please help me welcome Dr. Traci Pierce.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is there something I need to do to turn on the presentation? There it is. Okay. Magic. Great. Thank you. Well, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with all of you today about a topic that we love to talk about, and that's public education. There's no denying that the last couple of years have been challenging for our K-12 schools and continue to be challenging as we work together with parents in the community and our staffs to navigate all of the state mandates and requirements and work to keep our students and staff safe and keep our schools open for full-time in-person instruction. So as we start our presentation today, what I would like to start with Kennewick is putting kind of COVID aside for a moment and focus on, in addition to COVID and managing COVID, what we've been working on for the past couple of years in our school district, and that's updating our district strategic plan. So we do have a plan now focused with goals and objectives. This is that poster version of the plan that you see on the screen. And we have specific goals. And I'll start with our district focus goal. As a district, we want to remain innovative and proactive. We want to be accountable to our community and our taxpayers and very transparent about what our needs are as a school district and how we use our funds. We've got a community-focused goal. We have outstanding, amazing community partnerships. You heard from one today, GISA, in our school district, and we want to continue to build those community partnerships. I should mention also communities and schools, since they were featured today, both present in our schools, and that's one of our goals, is to ensure that our community sees themselves as important collaborators that they are. Our family-focused goal is on partnering with our families. We want to engage our families. We want to receive their input and feedback and help ensure that they're helping to shape our educational program in our district. You might not know this, but in Kennewick, Kennewick School District is the largest employer in the city of Kennewick. So we have over 3,000 staff members in all sorts of different jobs, and our goal is to be competitive, remain competitive, and to be able to continue to recruit, hire, and retain highly effective staff, and that all of our staff are valued and safe professionals. Those goals really all serve our 3 student-focused goals. Students are our priority. We want all of our students to be safe, known, and valued, engaged learners, and ready for their future. This plan was developed in collaboration with our community. We spent hours both in person and remotely receiving input and feedback from community members, parents, staff, and students. And so we're proud to have this as our focus moving forward into the future. Today, one of the things we're all focused on is funding. We rely on funding to help ensure that we can achieve these important goals for our students. Right now, the legislature has started their short session, so we're keeping an eye on everything that's happening at the state level, and we're also focused on our local level. we'll have levies coming up here. And every few years, you might know that school districts are typically out with a ballot measure and out with the communities talking about that. And this time around, we've got levies on the ballot in February. And a good way to remember the difference between a bond and a levy, sometimes we're talking about bonds and sometimes we're talking about levies, is that bonds fund buildings and levies fund learning. And before I get into some specifics about our levy, which is critically important because levy funding helps us bridge the gap between the funding we receive from the state and the funding that we actually need to run our district. But before I get into that, I just want to touch on our bonds and give you a progress update there. We are very appreciative of our community support. We did pass a bond in 2019, and that bond has funded a number of building projects in our school district. So we built phase 2 of Amistad Elementary. We built additions at Kennewick and Southridge, provided classroom additions and field upgrades at those 2 schools. We have a brand new, beautiful building, Kennewick High School for our staff and students there. And then Ridgeview Elementary is the next project in the queue, and that project's in the design phase. We also have funding in that bond measure for a future elementary school. So just real quickly, here's some great pictures. And I'd really encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to see any of our new projects, to swing by and try to visit. Kennewick High School in particular, since it's a brand new building, is really an amazing, great facility for our students and staff. And we're super appreciative of the community support that we receive. Today, the focus of the presentation, however, is on our levies. And so I'm going to quickly speak about what's on the ballot, why we need the levies. As I do this, I hope that you hear some connections between how the levy funds are used to help us achieve our goals that you saw. And I'll touch on what the levies cost and where you can find more information. So we have 2 replacement levies on the ballot coming up here in February. Proposition 1 is our replacement educational programs and operations, or epno levy. And Proposition 2 is our replacement technology levy. As I mentioned, levy funding is critically important for districts, not just Kennewick, Pasco, and Richland, but districts all across the state. All 295 districts across the state essentially rely on levy funding to help us bridge the gap between the funding we get from the state and the funding that we actually need. This is just how school funding works in our state. What's unique to Kennewick School District is that if we can pass our local levies, we also receive additional state funding called local effort assistance. This is levy equalization funding. The state recognizes that there are districts in the state that don't have as much assessed valuation when you look at all the commercial property and residential property as other districts in the state, particularly districts on the west side. And so what the state does is says to districts like ours, if you can pass your local levies, we'll give you additional funding to help equalize things. That makes sure that students across the state, wherever they live, receive some equitable opportunity in their education. And it also provides relief for our local taxpayers, because if we were to try to seek an amount similar from our community, for example, as Bellevue School District on the west side might try to collect, they can do that at a much lower tax rate than we could in our community. So for our district specifically, just to give you some concrete figures, for our 21-22 revenue budget, $17.2 million of that is coming from our epno levy, and about $14.5 million is coming from that additional state funding we receive, that levy equalization funding. And again, we only get that additional state funding if we can pass our local levies. So for us in Kennewick, that makes up about $32 million of our $285 million revenue budget, or about 11% total, when you look at both the local epno levy and that additional state LEA funding. So I'm going to walk us quickly through the important things that are funded by these 2 levies, and I'll start with the epno levy. This is the levy that funds health and safety, student learning and staffing, instructional support, operations and maintenance, and athletics and activities. So safety is a huge priority for our school district, and we rely on levy funding for the important partnership that we have with the City of Kennewick and Kennewick Police Department to provide school resource officers at our middle and high schools. We also use levy funding for security personnel staffing and for nurse and counselor staffing. Good example here is nurses. We receive from the state funding for 4 nurses for the entire school district. We rely on levy funding to fund the additional nurse funding or staffing positions that we have over that 4. So we have about 20 nurses in our district. We also rely on levy funding for student learning and staffing people like our graduation success coordinators in our high schools. Programs like International Baccalaureate and Advanced Placement rely on levy funding. And then we also use it for teacher professional development, substitutes, and special education. Levy funding helps us staff our secretaries, our paraeducators, and it helps fund curriculum. It helps to pay for operations and maintenance people, important people who work in our school district to help keep our school facilities well maintained and safe, also equipment and other supplies. And then athletics and activities is an area that is completely reliant on levy funding. The state does not see extracurricular activities and athletics as part of the program of basic education. So without levy funding, we wouldn't be able to provide these important programs for our students. In terms of how we use our LEA funding, that additional state funding and our local levy, you can see here on the screen the percentages and where that money goes. And another way to look at that same data is on this screen in terms of actual dollars. I want to highlight in the middle of the screen, you see special education, and that's an area that has historically been and continues to be very underfunded by our state. So we rely on levy funding to fund we use about $5.5 million each year to help pay for special education programs and staffing that our students need. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the epno levy. And then our second measure is our replacement technology levy. And that of course funds all the important technology, student and staff devices, projectors, different tech equipment, instructional software, support and training. So we're a big operation in our school district. We've got 18,500 students in 32 schools. We've got nearly 20,000 Chromebooks in the field with our student one-to-one computer program and about 4,800 iPads. So it requires quite a bit of resource to be able to purchase these devices and keep them well maintained and on a replacement cycle when we need to get them replaced. Again, staffing and support and training is also, we also use tech levy dollars for those items. So this slide shows you just in terms of breakdown where that tech levy money goes, and the majority of it goes for those student and staff computers. So quickly, how am I doing on time, friends? Am I okay? Okay. I want to touch on what the levies cost. So I've highlighted what the levies fund in terms of people and programs and how the levy funding helps us accomplish our strategic goals as a school district. And I'll talk a bit about what the levies cost. And there are a couple important things to remember here. One, these are replacement levies. We have these levies in place right now, and they expire in 2022. And so these new levies will be replacing the levies that are expiring. The second important thing to remember is that school districts collect an amount and they seek approval for an amount from the community. We don't collect more and can't collect more than the community approves in terms of that amount. We put an amount on the ballot and then we estimate a tax rate per thousand of assessed value based on the whole assessed valuation of the school district. If the assessed valuation grows more than we projected because more people are moving in and more businesses are moving in, we don't then collect more revenue from the community. We only collect the amount authorized. If the AV of the district increases more than projected, the tax rate actually decreases. So you'll see projected tax rates, and typically, historically, the tax rates have ended up being lower. So real quickly, there's some concrete information on the screen here. The first couple of rows show you the levies that are in place, both the epno and tech levy, the amounts and the rates that are current. And then the last 4 rows that you see on the screen show the replacement levies coming on board, the amounts of those levies that you'll see on your ballot, and the estimated tax rate for each levy. You'll see that our amounts are going up as we move forward into the future. And that's because our expenses are increasing. Just like everyone, we're experiencing inflation and increased utility costs and increased staffing costs. So we want to ensure that we put a plan forward that enables us to continue to have the programs and staffing that we have in place for our students. This slide shows you some concrete property value examples, and I'll highlight the $350,000 property example there in the middle. So currently at a home with a $350,000 assessed valuation, that homeowner is paying an amount of $707 per year for the annual levy for both the epno and the tech levy combined. And moving forward with the replacement levies, that same homeowner would be paying $826 annually, which is a difference of $119 per year. Our goal, as I said, is to be very transparent as a school district and ensure that people know what the costs are and where the money goes. We also look at the total tax rate as a state. So all of us in the state pay a state school levy rate, and then our local measures as well. So what you see on this slide is some historical current and future data. And you can see the combined rate of the state school levy together with our bond rate as a district, which we're paying off over time, and our epno and tech levies combined. So if you look at 2018, for example, on this slide, you'll see that the combined rate at that time was $8.16 per thousand of assessed value. And that rate has decreased over time. And we are interested and working to keep that rate now steady and predictable moving forward for our taxpayers and our community into the future. So with that, I think I've probably gone a little over my time, but I'm going to hand it over to Michelle. There is more information about our Kennewick measures on our district website. So ballots have probably already I've already received mine, and I have my voter pamphlet, so be looking for that in the mail. Election day is February 8th. Thank you so much.
So sorry.
A sincere thank you as a father of a Lincoln Leopard. Really, this is for, yeah, exactly, go Leopards. Want to thank you for balancing safety and education while also enhancing the resources and tools that you guys provide. I can't imagine how much goes into making some of those decisions and how much feedback you receive on a regular basis. Next up, we're going to hear from our Pasco School District Superintendent, Michelle Whitney. Superintendent Whitney has been a part of the Pasco School District for more than 20 years, starting out as a kindergarten teacher before moving on to serve as assistant principal and then principal at McLaughlin Middle School. She's also served as the district's director of human resources, executive director of teaching and learning, and deputy superintendent. She was sworn in as Pasco's school district superintendent in July of 2016. Superintendent Whitney is a proud graduate of CBC. I know Sarah Murphy's in here somewhere. You can give a whoop whoop wherever you're at, where she received her associate's degree before moving on to WSU to earn her bachelor's and master's degree in education. She also received her principal certification and superintendent's credentials from WSU. Please help me welcome Michelle Whitney.
So it is my absolute honor to be here. I was reminded, I think it was about 3 years ago that I spoke in front of this group. So it's amazing to be here in person. You're about the largest group of people I've spoken to in 24 months. So I have to admit, I'm slightly nervous. I don't typically get nervous about public speaking, but I am a little nervous today. So I am going to start my timer because when I'm nervous, I do I'm a talker. So I am extraordinarily grateful to get to serve this community in the role of superintendent, but really I've loved every job I've ever had in Pasco School District, and I'm proud to be a product of this community. I have 13 years of post-high school education that allows me to live my purpose every day from the chair of the superintendent, and all of them but 2 happened right here. And if I was a student in our system now, all 13 of them could happen here. So dreams can happen out of our local schools into our local universities and our community colleges and universities, and then you can become the superintendent. And that's a story I tell our students, that college education doesn't have to look a certain way. It can be a journey like mine. So like Tracy, we can often, oh, my thing's down there, but I'm too short to see it. So this can be awkward. Okay, hold on. This is adjusting. This is what good kindergarten teachers do. We adjust. So our presentations, really, I could stand up here and just say ditto. But what I would like, what I wanted to do for you, because I didn't want to be redundant in the information that I shared with you, is to really connect our levy proposition to our strategic plan. So the graphic that you can see on the screen is, I can't, but what you can see on the screen is our district strategic improvement plan, and it represents our correct collective commitment to 5 outrageous outcomes. There are 5 100% goals that when combined create a trajectory of success for our students, where they read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade in their language of instruction, they pass algebra by the end of 9th grade, they are on track for graduation by the end of 9th grade, they graduate, but not just graduate with a career path that they choose and having taken some steps while they're with us to attain that career path. And then we want 100% of our students to have meaningful connections and hope for their future. That goal in particular was helped framed by my student advisory council. I have 30 high school kids. I meet with 6 times a year. And I put my goals in front of them and I said, are these the right goals? And they said, that's not the right goals. You missed the mark with the last goal that used to say 100% of our students will be engaged in an extracurricular activity. They said, you're missing the heart and the relationship that is important in Pasco School District. So when your kids tell you you got it wrong, you go and you make it right. So we're proud of our 5th outrageous outcome. It exemplifies who we are and who we've always been, and was helped framed by 30 high school seniors who stood up and said that the superintendent got it wrong. So like Tracy, in our other school districts, we run bonds and levies. We recently passed a bond in November of 2017, which allowed us to add 2 new elementary schools to our roster of schools, 3 Rivers Elementary and Columbia River Elementary. Columbia River actually, quote unquote, opened during the pandemic. And I'm happy to report to you that even though our teachers knew that there would not be any kids in the physical classroom on the first day of school, I walked through that building and I'm not going to lie, I had tears in my eyes, because there's nothing sadder than a school building without kids in it. But every single one of those classrooms was ready to receive kids, up to and including name tags on desks ready to go. So we were glad when kids could finally come in and enjoy that building that the taxpayers supported us with. We also replaced and expanded Stevens Middle School, which is right down the road from here. If you haven't driven by it, please do. It is really a crown jewel of what we refer to as Central Pasco. We also added Ray Reynolds to our inventory of schools. It's right next door to Columbia River. That school is an amazing addition to our schools. We needed an additional middle school. Our middle schools were phenomenally overcrowded, but it also carries the name of Ray Reynolds. Many of you in this room may know him. Many of you may have advocated in the past to have a school named after him. So we're proud to have been able to name that building after a beloved former administrator of ours. It also went to paying for health and safety improvement at our school site. So every school at Pasco School District, when you walk up, you get buzzed into a security vestibule where someone interfaces with you before you get access to the full school building. All of our schools, new schools, are built that way from the beginning, but those schools that weren't built that way, we retrofit with that safety feature. And then we're breaking ground on a security and maintenance, or excuse me, a transportation and maintenance facility. So we're able to provide a brand new facility to our school bus drivers. And we recently received a request from our community member to name that facility after our fallen bus driver, Richard Linhart. So we're moving that request through the board approval process. And that brings us to our levy. Our levy, like Tracy very well spoken, I always like when Tracy goes first. It helps bridge the gap between what the state gives us to operate our schools and what we really need. And it helps pay for these 5 buckets of activities. Our levy, like Tracy's and Richland's, is a replacement levy. The current levy will expire, and this one, should it be successful, will replace it. And again, it helps bridge that gap between what the state gives us in revenue and what it takes to actually operate a school. For Pasco School District, the levy equalization that Tracy talked about would equal about $13.1 million for our school district, and the revenue from the taxpayers would equal about $21.5 million. So just over $34 million of revenue to support the programs that I'm going to talk about in a few slides. Our levy would be a 4-year levy, and when combined, our bond and levy rates you can see here, it would be an estimated levy rate of $1.75 per thousand of assessed. I like to say 100,000, and my finance guy who's in the back is like, that's the wrong thing. Per thousand of assessed value. So when you look at the combined bond and levy rate, while the estimated rate is $1.75, you can see that when you compare it to the 4-year levy, the prior 4-year levy, even though it's an additional quarter from the $1.50 we asked for before, the combined rate is really right around the same as the last 4-year cycle. So again, those 5 buckets of broad function that we provide, health and safety. Again, the bulleted items that are on the slide are the job functions that the levy helps pay for. But the thing that I wanted to point out here is the piece that is connected to our 5th outrageous outcome with those meaningful connections, so our students have hope for the future. We want our students to show up in our schools and feel safe, secure, and healthy. And the employee groups that are on this slide are critically important to that effort. Like Traci explained, our school nurses, we get 2.98 nurses funded for Pasco School District, and the community's investment in our school then funds to round out the 26 nurses that it takes to run our school district. And that is critically important to us in a non-pandemic year, but I can guarantee you that making it through these last 24 months would be impossible without the partnership of our health professionals right in the 4 walls of our buildings. We also use our levy to enhance and support our student learning and staffing. So things like advanced placement, highly capable instructional coaches, et cetera, all the bulleted items that are on the list. But I wanted to point out the connection to our graduation with a career path. So things like we at our high schools have a trimester schedule that allows students to take up to 30 high school credits over their 4 years. They need 24 to graduate. So that gives them some space and room in their schedule to explore specific pathways to careers. So for example, our high schools have a future teacher pathway. So we have students right now in our high schools who are taking classes toward their dream of being a teacher, earning high school credit, earning college credit, and learning about the industry and the profession of education right during their high school experience. Those students at the end of the school year, those seniors will come and sign with me in a superintendent signing day. And so I know who those students are, we stay in contact. And then when they graduate from college, they reach back out to me and we help make sure that they have all of the right application materials in the right kind of pile and that they are on our list to be interviewed. I can't guarantee our students are going to get jobs, but I can guarantee that those students who have been in our classrooms and come back to be teachers fulfill and meet the needs of our students. And I also can guarantee you that this superintendent sheds a tear when that happens, when our kids come back and I get to hire them again to be teacher, or hire them to be teachers in our classrooms. The investment that our levy makes that schedule possible for us. It enriches the pathways, it pays for the pathways, it pays for the additional staffing allocations to do that work. Without that investment, that wouldn't be possible for our students. Also pays for things like substitute teachers, which are critically important to us right now. I know that you've heard a lot about that. The levy would offset the cost. So for example, the state would give us $80 to pay a substitute for a day. The going industry rate is not $80, it's well beyond that. And so we make up the difference between what the daily rate is for a substitute, what the state gives us to pay them, and what it actually costs us at an industry standard. It also connects to our On Track for Graduation. So this is a phenomenal celebration. When I came in 2015-16, getting ready to be superintendent in 2016, I sat down and did a data analysis. At that time, 40% of our 9th graders were on track for graduation. And if that makes you gasp a little bit right here, it did me too. That means 60% of our students were 40 to 60% more likely to drop out because they were already behind credits in 9th grade. I'm proud to report that just 4 short years, this was pre-pandemic, but 4 short years into my superintendency focused on that goal, we were at 75% of our 9th graders were on track for graduation. Now it's not 100%, and I mean 100% when I say 100%. So we had work to do, and the pandemic hasn't helped us with that. But I know that when we can get kids back in school without disruption and get refocused on those levers we were pulling to make that success prior to the pandemic, that we'll be able to close that gap and ensure that the students who have had a disrupted education in our high schools get the credits they need to graduate. We also use our levy funds to support instructional supports, things like secretaries, paras, and really what I want, professional development, interventions, and technology. What I want to point out and highlight here is we have a 100% goal that our third graders will read on grade level in their language of instruction, and that our students will pass algebra by the end of 9th grade. And the truth of that is some students don't make that benchmark. Some of our students won't read on grade level at the end of 3rd grade. Some students won't pass algebra by the end of 9th grade. So for us, it's not a period at the end of that sentence, it's a comma, and it tells us we have more work to do. So the levy helps us fund those things that allow us to do the additional work. The things like interventions, which is additional staffing allocations, it's additional curriculum materials, it's additional time, and things like high quality curriculum materials. So we have a curriculum, all school districts have a curriculum renewal cycle. Our curriculum materials have to be aligned to the standards to set our kids up for success. And you need to review them on a cycle. So annually, you're engaged in a cycle of reviewing curriculum materials. In the years where you have to replace curriculum materials, the state every year gives us between $600,000 and $800 to pay for curriculum materials. When you have to replace a curriculum, a set of curriculum, it costs you anywhere between $3 and $7 million. The levy offsets the cost of those, the actual cost of those curriculum materials. And you might ask, well, do you have a replacement every year? And the answer is yes, almost every year, because you never want to replace all your curriculum materials at one time, just to be fiscally responsible. So the levy also helps support our operations and maintenance aspects of our organization. These are the critically important functions that happen every day. And we're so incredibly grateful to our custodians, our grounds and maintenance workers. And then the snow comes. We're grateful for them anyway. Then the snow comes, and that gratitude is only amplified. We have the levy also helps us pay for building maintenance. So when we pass a bond and we want to protect and maintain and preserve that community asset, so the levy helps us pay for building maintenance, equipment supplies, utilities, fuel, vehicle maintenance, and mechanics. And our mechanics are given in a letter of accommodation from the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction every year as phenomenal stewards in making sure that our bus fleet is running, and they every year are accommodated by the state for their efforts in that regard. I think athletics and activities is the area that most of us are familiar with that levies pay for. So if we pay for athletics, coaches, advisors, competitions, the visual and performing arts, music, and extracurricular activities, things like robotics and chess clubs. So sometimes I think we narrowly think about athletics and activities as a 6 through 12 investment in our system, but it's really a K-12 investment because we have after school all-stars for our elementary students. We have robotics clubs at the elementary and chess club. So it really is a K-12 investment in our public schools, and really important to enhance that academic experience with these extracurricular activities so that our students are having that well-rounded experience. I can tell you that it was not history class that was motivating me every day to show up to high school. I was a varsity gymnast, and that is what was motivating me to keep my grades up and show up to high school. So no offense to people who taught history or love history, but it was the gymnastics mat that was calling me, not the history book. I did want to just briefly touch on we are all intimately connected with the disruptive impacts of COVID. We live it daily. We feel the frustration and the disruption. There has also been extraordinary innovation that has occurred because of the necessity for us to look at public education differently. And I wanted to highlight one of those. We as an organization have always had an online offering for our students called iPal. As a result of COVID, we had families who said, this virtual environment is actually really working for us as families, and we'd like the opportunity to maintain something that looks similar to the experience they had last year. iPal was an all online experience. You get a computer, you get an online curriculum, and as a family, you're just marching your kids through that online. You come in once a week, check in with a teacher. The experience of last year was a teacher online doing the teaching using our district adopted curriculum materials and having that personalized instructional experience. We've replicated and enhanced the experience of last year and added to our menu an offering called Pixel. So it's an enhanced version of what we delivered last year. Students spend about 70 to 80% of their day engaging with the teacher online, focused on instruction that is aligned with our core curriculum. So it's very similar to an experience that a third grader would have. They're having that third grade experience virtually. It's been a phenomenal offering. Parents are, we have about 450 parents and families who are kids and families who are still engaged in that learning mechanism. And we've added what we're calling P3, or the Pasco Parent Partnership, which is a homeschool partnership. That is not an offering that we've offered in the past. Kennewick and Richland has had that as their menu of offerings for families for a really long time. Pasco School District had not, and it had been an interest of this community. So it was the right time for us to pull that lever and offer that to our community. So out of the pandemic, out of the urgency and the need to pivot quickly to meet the needs of our families, we added 2 robust offerings to our or what we're calling our virtual academy in Pixel and P3. iPal, Pixel, and P3 combined are serving about 750 kids. So that's the size of at least one of our elementary schools. So I highlight this as an innovation that really was shaped by COVID. The other place, and we just got permission last night from our school board to move in this direction, is the focus on social emotional learning has always been important to us as a Pasco School District. In the face of this pandemic and the amplification of the mental health and emotional needs of our kids, we have had to add layers and enhance our current offerings. So we have counselors at every school. We have robust partnerships with local community agencies, and they're amazing. And the need is still just that great. So we're partnering with an organization called Hazel Health to offer telecounseling to our students through a referral process in partnership with parents. Students would have access to up to 6 teletherapy appointments, and that is for any student who feels like they need that kind of support. It doesn't have to be a student who has a diagnosis. So for you to navigate an organization, a counseling organization, typically you would need a diagnosis. These 6 teletherapy appointments are not that way. Students can do it at school. Students can do it at home. Parents can log in with the students, whether they're at home or at school, but it's an opportunity for us to get the much needed services to students who need it in a way that is agile and nimble. So we're very excited to add that to our repertoire as a way to meet the demand right now. So with that, we are Pasco, one levy or one team, one dream, and our levy 2022, your ballot should be in your mailbox, and we'd like you to vote by February 8th. Thank you so much.
Goodness. If that's what nervous looks like, I think the rest of us are in pretty big trouble. You're gonna be great. Oh, thank you so much, Superintendent Whitney. Finally, we'll hear from Clinton Sherman. Great big thank you. I know you just found out that you would be speaking today, what, about an hour and a half ago? Surprise. He is the Executive Director of Financial Services at the Richland School District. Clinton is, as I mentioned, the Executive Director for the Richland School District of Financial Services, excuse me. Clinton has been a part of the Richland School District for 7 years. Prior to that, he spent 8 years in the same role at a smaller school district in Southern Grant County. Clinton is a member of the Washington Association of School Administrators, the Washington Association of School Business Officials, and a board member of the School Insurance Association of Washington, where he also serves as the board fiscal officer. In addition, Clinton has coached various youth and school sports throughout the years, led scouting troops, and volunteered in different capacities across the Tri-Cities. Please help me welcome Clinton Sherman.
I don't worry about falling up. I worry about falling down.
Thanks, everybody. I am nervous and happy to be here at the same time, which is a fun combination. It's right, though. Ditto. All the same struggles are the same. I will delineate a couple of things a little different for us, and we'll get started whenever the slides go up. Great. I think at first before we hop into the levies and bonds, I think we wanted to talk about our response to the pandemic, really, and trying to meet the students' needs as the moment kept changing. Everything kept changing all the time pretty rapidly. We were super excited to get the students back in the fall of 2020 in hybrid learning, which we had never done before anywhere across the state. And we really pushed hard to get kids full back in the spring of 2021. That was very exciting. And like we all know, the protocols and the rules of what to do and how to handle different things and surfaces, cleaning, all this stuff kept changing on us over and over again. Like the other districts, we wanted to meet parents' needs where they were. And so we developed the Pacific Crest Online Academy. At first it was called Richland Virtual School, because parents and students felt safer and felt like it was meeting their needs to be online. And so we really invested. We have about 600 students in that program right now. And that has been really impressive. Those teachers are doing really innovative things that haven't in education in the past. So it's just really incredible, to be honest with you. Part of that was a pretty expansive road to recovery plan that attacks all these different mitigating factors and what we need to do to move forward as a system and results from the pandemic. A big one of that, of course, is our students' mental health. And so we had created, right before this all happened, a mental health assistance team, and that officially launched in 2020. And that's made up of counselors, psychologists, school nurses. We get 1.93 if we're trying to do that. And we have about 13 with 20 sites. Another way to look at the prototypical school funding formula they talked about earlier, and how there's the deficit in what we're funded and how the levies make that difference. A pretty extreme example is that school psychologist. A high school would have to have 40,000 students in it to generate one psychologist for the school. Yeah, so the numbers in the formula don't make a ton of sense. There are some bills being reviewed now in legislative session that we're all hoping can adjust those formulas to fully fund education. So one of the things that the MHAT team has done is they implemented a BIMAS 2 screener, which is a self-assessment for students to kind of check in with where they were with their well-being, and then experts in the field, which is not me. I'm normally behind 3 screens in Excel, not standing in front of people. So 1,000 people is a real bummer for you. It would be a bummer for me. And so kind of a check-in, and then experts work through that data and reach out to those kids one-on-one, which is pretty powerful. And we're continuing to build that curriculum and move forward with this MHAT team. They're doing some pretty incredible work and have been recognized. The counselor, the social worker, and psychologist are all building social emotional learning curriculum at the state level, which I think is pretty phenomenal for them. Like the other districts, the levies make the difference, not only in a student wanting to go to gymnastics every day and be at school, also in the deficit of funding that we receive from the state. We also have 2 measures expiring here at the end of the year, and you will see 2 ballots on the measure. Proposition 1 is the epno levy we talked about earlier. Our rate is maintaining a rate of $2.50. In the past, that rate was like $3.48, I think, before the legislature did some tricky stuff, and that's why there's a state levy rate as well. Most people probably know about the tech levy. We walked through those. It all pays for the same stuff because it's only what's allowable, which is technology, staff development for technology, and training. And that's how we've had a one-to-one. Having that on the last measure really allowed us to pivot quickly to one-to-one. All the devices started going home to students, whereas before the devices would stay in a classroom on a charging cart. But as things moved quickly, we were able to pivot quickly and move one-to-one pretty quickly, which I felt was impressive. I just said all this, so that was great on me. I'm excited about that. One of the important things about levy is that it is one of the only aspects where as those dollars come in, we have the control. Like right now, we all know that nurses are high priority. We've been funding those a lot. Psychologists, other special education, we also spend about $3.5 million to make up the deficit. But levies are interesting because they're one of the only revenue streams that touch every aspect of education. So not only are those special ed kids having more resources to meet their needs, but the highly capable students on the other end of the spectrum who are gifted, we get a very small amount compared to the number of kids being served. And so we subsidize that with a levy as well to offer more classes and more outlets for those students. So those students can experience a year's growth, right? So it's so vital because it just touches every aspect of education in a way that no other, like Title I dollars or the federal money that came in and we're talking about, those all have specific strings attached to them that can only go for certain things. And so the levies really do make the difference, and they allow us as a community to show where our investments are in our students. There's a video, I think I'm gonna skip it. That's cool. I think I only have like 3 minutes left, which I want to thank you two for. That's also perfect. I do think there's one more slide though. I'm not joking. I'm so super appreciative. Great. We have a long history of community support in Richland. Over the last decade, we've had over 65%, and the one before that was at 60%. Like I said earlier, it's only a simple majority, so it's 50% plus one vote. We're hoping to see that continue to make that difference. Like I said, it's a long-standing history. How we're sharing our stuff, I wish they would have put a QR code in. That's a super clever idea. They didn't do that for my folks. We have a website with all the graphs and historical data for our levies. Tomorrow, if you guys are super interested in hearing more, there will be a levy information night with tables like this that folks from athletics and special education and music and math and all these tables will be set up, and we're having kind of an open house. There'll be cellos playing on the sides, really pretty. And I'll have a whiteboard if you want to talk into more number stuff. I'll feel way more comfortable about that. And that'll be tomorrow at Richland High at, I want to say 5:30. I think I have, oh, sweet. All right. So one last thing, as they also talked about, we're also doing some long range planning with our facilities. I'm glad that bonds for buildings and levies are for learning was already hit. That's, you guys know that now. The next time we come back, that'll be old hat. That's fantastic. So we have a strategic planning committee moving forward with some facility planning for the future. And you'll see more of that as it comes out. That probably feels right? Okay. And that's, I think, all I have. Did I make my time? All right. Good work, team. I appreciate it.
Sure. So you seriously just found out about this? Yeah, you could have fooled us. We got to hear a lot about, I think one of the main factors that drives all of us to be here, to stay here, and why people come to the Tri-City. So I would just like to have us give another big round of applause to all of our representatives from our local school district. Next up, Logan, you want to give some stuff away? Okay, yes.
All right, here we go. So our first gift is from Giesa Credit Union. You guys always do a great job on these. I think I'm just going to take it probably myself. Roy Keck, Port of Benton. Congratulations, Roy. We have also a couple gift cards to Soy 705. Our winner for that is Kathleen Hoover with Design West. All right, and our last giveaway from Soy 705 is going to go to Gracie Valle with Pasco School District.
And I'm back. All right. Thank you, Logan. Thank you to Giesa Credit Union. Appreciate everything that you guys do. So such a perfect marriage with having Giesa sponsor today with everything that you guys do in our local schools. So thank you for that. Thank you to our guest speakers. Once again, I'm sorry, I want to do it again. Another round of applause. You guys were phenomenal. I don't want to take away anything from you, Don, but thank you to the wonderful staff at the Red Lion Hotel and Conference Center. Man, I wonder when the last time it was that they had to do all of this. They did just a great job. So thank you so very much. And then a sincere thank you to both everybody that showed up today. This is really cool. It was really challenging to, recognize people. It's like, I think I know that. Oh, I shouldn't have given them a hug. So it's just, it's really nice to start kind of doing some things that are a little more normal. And I want to thank those, I'm not sure where to look, that joined us via Zoom as well. Today's luncheon will be posted on the Chamber's Facebook page and YouTube channels. Please forward the presentation to your friends, family, and coworkers, and then like and subscribe when you're there. Thank you all so very much for attending today, and we're looking forward to seeing you very soon. Thanks.